Germany has long been the powerhouse of Europe, and its economy is largely driven by world-leading automobile companies like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz.
When you hear Germany, an economic crisis is probably the last thing that comes to mind. Unfortunately, that was true for Germany too, until it wasn't. In 2022, the powerhouse became a complete economic bomb. By 2023, it had slipped into a 0.3% recession, which by OECD standards was a lot. And in 2024, the country that was once one of the fastest-growing economies is now, well, barely growing. But the thing is, things might be bad now, but 2025 could be the year that either saves Germany's auto industry or pushes it past the point of no return. So how did we get here? And more importantly, what happens next? Naturally, we all know what Germany's biggest strength is, its automotive industry, which has long been a symbol of its economic stability and global dominance. Yet, with the recession it's facing right now, the entire industry is unfortunately finding itself at a crossroads. It's probably even facing a crisis that could threaten its future growth. How did this happen? How is a country that once set the gold standard for automotive excellence now grappling with economic turbulence this bad? Today, we're trying to get to the bottom of what this horrible economic crisis is doing to the country, particularly to its trophy automotive industry. So, what is even happening? More importantly, can these automakers fix it before things get really bad? If you want more deep dives and case studies like this one, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel? We would absolutely love to have you on board. Okay, now let's get into it. Germany's automotive industry. Regardless of us mentioning this or not, Germany's auto industry isn't just big, it's massive. It contributes roughly 5% to the country's GDP and employs around 770,000 people directly. Come on now, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, they've literally been the benchmark for the automotive industry worldwide. Other companies look up to them and at them and try to follow in their skid marks, pun intended, to prevent their own quality from falling behind. Or at least they did until 2022. Now, they're not only not managing to keep up with other leading names, they're also struggling to keep up with their own past success. VDA, or the German Association of the Automotive Industry, themselves openly call this out. They believe that their automotives have been the biggest victim of the country's economic decline, which has resulted in German cars losing their value globally. Naturally, this has caused them to drop from the global competitive ranks very quickly. In other words, the German automotive industry is losing face. The factors behind the crisis: 1. Declining demand for electric vehicles. The climate crisis has been a heavy struggle for the entire world. It's something that needs to be dealt with as a whole and requires certain strict measures to make sure the world, well, lives on. But there is still a massive uncertainty surrounding the entire thing. Like all governments in the world, the German government is also very unsure of how to deal with it. This is precisely why there's a major disconnect between the German government and major automotive labels. More on this later. The constant back and forth on the electric vehicle subsidies, in addition to the new policies that essentially threaten automakers to push their EV sales to 20% and many other problems, is the reason Germany doesn't have a solid vision of their car industry. The world is pushing towards electric vehicles, but the infrastructure for these cars is not good enough for a normal person to get one. That's the major disconnect. The demand for these vehicles is not high enough. Companies are heavily invested, or should we say are forced to be heavily invested in electric car production, but the results haven't been as promising as expected. Take Porsche, for example. The luxury automaker planned an aggressive expansion into the EV market with its flagship Taycan model. However, due to weak demand, Porsche announced plans to cut 1,900 jobs by 2029. What's more unfortunate is that the sales of said model plummeted exponentially in many key market areas like China. In 2024, there was a 49% drop worldwide for Taycan and a 28% drop in China alone. For those who don't get the hint, that's a staggering loss. The three leading ladies in the industry, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW, reported an absolutely horrific net profit decline of 64%, 84%, and 54% respectively in 2024. This level of loss has literally been unprecedented in the German automotive industry. 2. Manufacturing costs and the crippling energy crisis. Germany's manufacturing costs are absolutely through the roof, and we're not just talking about a small bump here. The situation is so bad that even the VDA is practically begging for help. German automakers are being crushed by a triple threat of sky-high energy costs, suffocating regulations, and a tax system that's, well, not friendly. They're struggling to keep up with global competitors, and the EU's ambitious climate goals are making everything even worse. They're pushing for carbon neutrality by 2045, which sounds great on paper, but it's leaving the German government basically powerless to help their automotive industry. The issue is presenting itself in the form of something called Dunkelflaute, or dark doldrums. That's when winter weather leads to lack of wind and solar energy, causing energy shortages and high electricity costs. And guess which industry gets hit the hardest? Yep, the auto sector. German automakers rely on a steady, affordable power supply to keep their factories running. But when electricity costs spike, production naturally slows down, no pun intended. Factories cut shifts and the whole system falls on its face. 3. Where are the chargers? So let's say you actually want to buy an electric car, then good luck finding a charging station. We've mentioned this before, but you have no idea how messy the charging infrastructure is getting day by day. This isn't only happening in Germany, but essentially the entire world. There are barely any stations around, and those that exist have unclear billing rules. And on top of that, last-minute global policy shifts make everything more confusing than it already is. Experts are screaming for a proper strategy, but instead we're just stuck in a never-ending loop of overcomplicated rules and bureaucratic nonsense. If Germany really wants to lead the EV revolution, it needs to make sure people can actually drive these things without a constant scavenger hunt for a working charger. 4. China's impact on Germany. For a long time, China was like the golden ticket for European car brands. People were obsessed with luxury cars. So, needless to say, VW, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW jumped on the hype train and teamed up with local companies. Everything was going great until it wasn't. Now, sales are crashing thanks to them. In 2023, VW's China sales dropped by 9.5%, Mercedes-Benz fell 7%, and BMW with a painful 13.4%. Their total market share in China used to be 26.2% back in 2019. Now, it's barely 18.7%. Turns out the Chinese economy, like the rest of the world, is slowing down. People aren't that into expensive foreign cars anymore, and local brands, especially EV ones, are taking over the scene. Additionally, with a demand for local brands increasing, the Chinese auto industry has leveled up a lot as well. They're no longer just the budget-friendly option, they're actually good. In fact, Chinese cars have improved to the point that these brands are now creeping up into the European market as well. They've got way lower costs, cheaper labor, no messy gas-to-electric transition trauma, and the Chinese government basically funds them so they can sell cars at ridiculously low prices, something Germany recently just took away from its own EV industry. The EU saw this happening and hit back with extra tariffs on Chinese-made EVs in October as they hoped to slow them down. But the damage was already done, and now German car companies are struggling to keep up with their stuff. 5. Trump troubles. Germany's auto industry was already suffering from EU's new tariffs on Chinese electric cars. They were scared China would clap back and mess with their exports. But now, there's a new problem. Trump might bring in tariffs on EU cars, which would make things even worse. And since German car companies rely so much on exports, protectionism is starting to feel like a real nightmare. We can already see the early signs of this. Trump's 25% tariff on goods from China and Mexico ended up messing up almost all the company's shares. Stellantis and Volkswagen, which have major operations in Mexico, were down to a whopping 6.8% and 5.6% respectively. Could it be their own fault? But some of these problems didn't just come out of nowhere. Analyst Matthias Schmidt thinks German carmakers got way too comfortable with keeping things going as they were. They saw the issues way before, but chose to ignore them because cheap Russian gas made everything seem fine. For years, their big profits from China covered up Germany's high labor costs and gave unions a strong bargaining chip. But now that China is struggling, Germany is feeling the pain. Dr. Ferdinand Dudenhofer, a car industry expert, thinks that Germany is not competitive anymore, and the real reason is just that they're falling behind in new tech. Now, China is the real leader in things like digital car tech and battery innovation. German companies might have to pack up and move their factories elsewhere. Example case study: VW's reality check. Last year, things at VW got real messy. The company, which has almost half of its global staff in Germany, finally decided it had to do something drastic to cut costs. The workers thought they were going to negotiate a 7% pay raise, but VW basically told them to take a 10% pay cut instead. And to make things even worse, they mentioned that they might have to shut down 3 of their factories. VW had never closed a German factory in its 87-year history, but they were seriously considering it this time. Naturally, unions and workers weren't having any of it. Strikes broke out, arguments escalated, and in the end, VW backed off, but the damage was already done. Just the fact that they even suggested it was enough to send the entire industry into panic mode. Still, workers didn't walk away unscathed. Pay cuts, fewer bonuses, and now now, VW plans to slash 35,000 jobs by 2030. And it's not just them, it's every major automaker in the country. BMW, Audi, and even Porsche have all been making cuts, either through layoffs, hiring freezes, or scaling back production. The industry as a whole is tightening and is struggling. And for workers, that means a whole lot of uncertainty about the future, in addition to a lack of workplace security. Can Germany bounce back? We're not economists, so we can't just throw out bold predictions about Germany's ability to recover. But come on, it's Germany. If there's any country that can pull itself out of an industrial slump, it's them. So really, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And that's a bit difficult to answer, so we'll just be generalizing here. And thankfully, all hope is definitely not lost. According to union spokesperson Simon Schultz, the current situation is manageable, but only if the next elections bring in a government that actually supports the industry enough for it to thrive. So, what needs to be done? First off, Germany has to figure out a way to stabilize energy prices. That could mean better energy storage, government subsidies, or diversifying energy sources. Whatever it takes, factories simply cannot keep running at a loss. It's imperative. German automakers also need to take the Chinese threat seriously. They have to catch up with Chinese EVs by actually considering consumer demands. That could literally mean doing anything to get back into the game, like maybe lowering production costs, improving battery efficiency, or maybe not slapping high-end price tags on mid-tier electric cars. Since China and the US aren't exactly the most reliable markets anymore, why not explore other options? We get that this is easier said than done, but maybe extending their auto industry market to other areas like one of the biggest countries in the world, India, could just be the answer to this crisis. But for that, Germany needs to step up its game when it comes to affordable and innovative cars. They won't be the only ones competing for that market. Korea? And last but not the least, these German auto industry giants need to protect their workers. More layoffs will only create more unrest, and the last thing Germany needs right now is another political crisis. What 2025 holds? 2025 could be the turning point for Germany's auto industry, a real make-or-break year, so to speak. With a new government on the horizon that recognizes its current internal framework and is ready to stabilize energy prices and back innovative strategies, there's a real shot at a comeback. But unfortunately, it's not just about internal fixes. The entire global economic foundation is shifting with Trump's win. Global markets, especially in the US and China, are going to go through an even bigger change in the next few months. As Stefan Bratzel puts it, Germany must be at least as innovative as it is expensive. In other words, if German automakers want to win over American and Chinese consumers, in addition to other parts of the world, they need to deliver breakthrough, cost-effective EV solutions without sacrificing their legendary quality. That is, if no unexpected curveballs in the global economy come along to ruin everything else. So, what do you think? Can Germany turn this around, or are we collectively witnessing the downfall of one of the world's biggest economies, and with it, one of the biggest auto industries? Only time will tell. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below and subscribe for more economic deep dives.